Bantam released the first of their short story collections in August of 1995. Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina was edited by Kevin J. Anderson and featured stories from both Star Wars regulars like Timothy Zahn and Tom Veitch, the author of the Dark Empire comic, as well as some people who would eventually write Star Wars stories like A.C. Crispin, who wrote the Han Solo trilogy. And in addition, there are some sci-fi writers in here who were unfamiliar to me. I was glad to see, though, that after Bantam scrapped his full-length Star Wars story, that Kenneth C. Flint still shows up in here with one of the short stories. Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina takes a Rashomon approach to Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker's fateful visit to the cantina. We have 16 stories telling us basically the perspectives and the viewpoints of many of the minor characters that we meet in the cantina. So let's jump right in. I thought I'd do sort of a short round where I just go through each story and briefly say what I liked, what I didn't like. So first, We Don't Do Weddings, The Band's Tale by Kathy Tyers. This one was short but fun. It's basically the backstory behind how the modal nodes that Biff band were playing in the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's pretty basic. They worked for Jabba. They got a really good offer to play a wedding. It goes horribly, and now they're hiding out there afraid that Jabba's going to kill them. I think the most fun from this is that Kathy Tyers is a musician, so she knows what it's like to be in a band, what it's like to play weddings, and those parts felt really real to me. Next up is A Hunter's Fate, Greedo's Tale by Tom Veitch and Martha Veitch. I wasn't as crazy about Greedo's story, mostly because I felt like it was too long. We basically saw Greedo's whole life story, from him being a young Rhodian on a jungle planet to living on Nar Shaddaa to becoming a bounty hunter, and that's pretty much it. That's when he dies. Greedo's a really bad bounty hunter. He's naive, he gets way in over his head. But I thought it was a fun inversion of what you would expect for the people in the cantina, that they're not all seasoned killers, and some of them have no idea what they're doing. And that's what gets Greedo killed. Third was Hammertone, The Tale of the Tonica Sisters by Timothy Zahn. And this was in my top 3. Basically, it's our first introduction to Shada Dukal and Carolee Doolin. We met Shada in the Thrawn trilogy. We just didn't know it because we didn't get her name yet, but they are Mistral warriors. They're hired for a job, and then some of their group is killed, so they steal stuff from the Empire, are hiding out, pretending to be these con artists, get arrested, get out. It's not a super complex story, but it was fun to meet them for the first time, and it was also a nice foreshadowing of the Death Star 2 that shows up in Return of the Jedi. So it's on, I liked it, but I pretty much always like his stuff. The fourth story was Play It Again, Figrin Dan, The Tale of Muftak and Kabe from A.C. Crispin. This one was okay. I guess what I found most interesting was, while reading Children of the Jedi, I could not picture the Talls in my head, and I was too lazy to Google them. So realizing that that furry white dude in the Mos Eisley Cantina was a Talls it worked for me. The fifth story was The Sand Tender, The Hammerhead's Tale by Dave Wolverton, about Moma Nadin, the Ithorian, or the Hammerhead. And I actually liked this story better than Courtship of Princess Leia. So I don't think Dave Wolverton is specifically bad at writing Star Wars. I just did not like his first attempt. This one was a good revenge story. Basically a character who wants to get revenge, but the Ithorians don't condone killing, so a lot of his conflict is, I really want to kill this Imperial officer because of all the bad things he did, but how do I do it? And he was able to do it without actually killing him, so good job. Sixth up was one of the stories in my bottom 3. I did not like this one at all. Be Still My Heart, The Bartender's Tale by David Bischoff. It's about Werher, the bartender. I didn't like it. He's like wanting to brew something for Jabba, Night Lily, The Lover's Tale by Barbara Hambly was another one in my top 3. I really enjoyed this. It's the story of the Godel and the weird yam face looking lady, who you can sort of see for a brief moment in their canoodling in the cantina. This was great. I loved it so much. The Godel, I think his name is Feltepern Trevag. He's such an awful person. He works for the Empire, but he's only out for himself. And the inversion of finding out at the end that Night Lily was so dangerous, but at the same time completely as naive as you expected, was great. Not everyone likes Hambly's Star Wars works, but I do, and I really enjoyed this one. It was definitely one of the top stories for me. Next was Empire Blues, The Devaronian's Tale by Daniel Keyes Morin. Now, I think Morin wrote 2 more short stories in the other 2 collections that Anderson edited about Jabba's Palace and Bounty Hunters, and both times they're about Boba Fett, but this is one of the devil head looking guys. It was okay. It was pretty long. I just enjoyed how manipulative he was, to the point that he wants to hear the Bith band, so he has Jabba hire them and then has the Whippet hire them for the wedding specifically so that they could get hired by Wooher and he can finally get to listen to them. It was a little convoluted, but I very much enjoy a Machiavellian character like that. Then we had 2 sort of connected tales. These work together better a lot more than some of the other stories did. Swap Meet, The Jawa's Tale by Kevin J. Anderson was about a Jawa whose friend was in the sandcrawler that was destroyed by the Imperials. So he's at the Mos Eisley Cantina drinking because he wants to kill Imperials. And we get to the very end of his story. He's taken out the blaster. He's about to shoot. And then we cut to the next story, Trade Wins the Ranit's Tale by Rebecca Moesta, which filled in the gaps of the Jawa's Tale in a really nice way. We find out that the little rat guy that the Jawa traded with for a Sand People talisman or whatever, yeah, he stole the Jawa's power pack for his blasters. So it ends on a cliffhanger, but we find out in the Ranit's Tale that his going out in a blaze of glory, well, he went out, the blaze of glory didn't really happen. Next was When the Desert Wind Turns, The Stormtrooper's Tale, which was another long one that gave us basically someone's entire backstory, which I liked better than Greedo's Tale because it sort of gave you the face behind the helmet for both the stormtrooper who goes, "Look, sir, droids!" and one of the stormtroopers that comes in after the bar fight. I especially like that he was originally going to be an AT-AT pilot, but he had figured out their weakness with their legs, and General Veers does not want anyone to rain on his parade, so he does not become an AT-AT pilot, and it's strongly hinted that he's going to defect to the rebellion and tell them about that flaw. So good job, Stormtrooper. Next was Soup's On, The Pipe Smoker's Tale. Out of all the stories in Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, this was the only one I remembered, perhaps because it is both completely bizarre and hugely memorable. We find out that the weird-looking pipe smoker who's standing at the bar is actually an assassin named Danik Jericho, and he's an Anzadi, which is like a sort of human-looking humanoid, but they've got these pouches in their cheeks with these things, and they basically like drink people's brains. She has a very distinct writing style. I would say it's more on the Barbara Hambly side than the Timothy Zahn. Very purple, very distinct. But you know what? While it's not my top 3, it was certainly memorable. Memorable enough that when I was rereading this, I went, oh, and this one was from here. Next was At the Crossroads, The Spacer's Tale by Jerry Oltian. This is the guy in the spacesuit that's standing by the bar that Obi-Wan first talks to, and he was okay. He's like force sensitive, he works for the monks, he's running from the Imperials. That's pretty much it. He's okay. Next was Kenneth C. Flint's story, Dr. Death, The Tale of Dr. Evzan and Ponda Baba. I said that I was excited that Flint got to contribute a story here, but I did not like this one at all. This one, unlike the others, which tend to basically show the same scenes over and over again, it was set afterwards. Dr. Evazan is on Ando, which is the planet that the Aqualish are from, but I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. He's like that mad doctor, and he's trying to brain swap people. Second to last was Drawing the Maps of Peace, The Moisture Farmer's Tale by M. Shane Bell. This was in my top 3. I very much like this. It's about a moisture farmer named Eric Johansson, who hasn't actually been identified in the Mos Eisley Cantina scenes. He's usually picked as this like random moisture farmer who's sitting there, but I guess Lucasfilm can't say that he is, so whatever. He wants to have peaceful relations between the Jawas, the humans, and the Tusken Raiders. I thought his story was a really nice look into the tensions between those communities, and I liked it a lot. And then last was One Last Night in the Mos Eisley Cantina, The Tale of the Wolfman and the Lamproid by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. You're thinking of the Wolfman, you're probably thinking of this guy. This Wolfman is the one that they actually called while filming Hyena Man. And then the Lamproid is the weird alien throat teeth thing. This was another one where most of the story wasn't actually them on Tatooine, but the Wolfman at the Battle of Endor, and he keeps flashing back to previous periods of his life, when they first met at the cantina, when the Lamproid died on Hoth. This was another one of my bottom 3, just because the pairing's really weird. He's a Wolfman, I don't even know what she looks like, all we see is her head. There was a lot of jumping back and forth between him in Endor and then him somewhere else, and back and forth and back and forth, and yeah, wasn't a fan at all. So, in short, Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina promises to take a Rashomon approach, basically showing us the scenes that happen in the cantina from all these different conflicting perspectives. And that's really cool, but it gets old really fast, because literally everyone, it seems, witnesses the bar fight between Dr. Evazan and Pando Baba and Luke and Ben Kenobi, and they have something to say about it. And then pretty much everyone witnesses Han shooting Greedo. My favorite stories were the ones that showed us stuff beyond that, gave us glimpses into other aspects of Tatooine or people on Tatooine. But it's also funny that 2 of my least favorite stories were the 2 that relied the least on the Mos Eisley Cantina scenes. Dr. Death was just, I didn't like it. And the Wolfman Lamproid romance, I've said before that I like when they bring aliens into things, but sometimes the aliens are too much, and then it's almost like I have an adverse reaction. That's what I had there. Also, more so than we've seen in the Bantam books to date was a lot of interplay and connectivity between stories, but it sort of varies how well that works. We have things like the band story by Tyres, and then the Devaronian story by Moran. And basically, Moran's story shows us how the devil guy manipulated everything in the previous story. Or we have something like Anderson and Moesta's stories, which tie so closely together, and I really enjoyed those. But then we have a few issues where people who we've previously been established as one particular way, I'm thinking of Greedo being naive and over his head, and yet when he shows up in other people's stories, he's rude and he's pompous, and he comes across as more proficient of a bounty hunter than he actually is. So while I'm sure that everyone was talking to each other while they were working on this, I think that maybe some people talk to others more in depth, and so some stories fit together really well and some stories don't fit as good. So, if you're interested in reading Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, I would say if you want to read every story, each story, all 16 stories, do not do what I did. Do not read them in a week. At that rate, you have to read 2 or more a day. You're not really savoring them, and that may be why I disliked some of them so much. But if you could take your time, if you could maybe read one, take a little break, read one, yeah, go ahead and do that. And if you also want to go online, compile what's the most highly rated stories and only read those, yeah, do that. At this point, everything in here has been decanonized, so read what you want to read, avoid the other ones, and I think you'll be perfectly happy. So next time, I'm going to be finishing the Corellian trilogy by Roger McBride Allen with the 3rd book, Showdown at Centerpoint.